Today I will discuss about petroleum. After going through this lecture, you will understand the nature and properties of petroleum, origin and recovery, distribution of petroleum and mineral oil in India, extent of oil bearing strata in India, onshore oil production in India like states in Assam, Gujarat, Rajasthan, oil fields, offshore oil production in India, example western coast, eastern coast in India. I will also discuss about petroleum refining, petroleum product pipelines, petroleum and mineral oil at world level, and supergiant oil fields in different parts of the world such as Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, Russia, in United States, Mexico, Canada, in Venezuela, Brazil, in United Kingdom, and in African regions. Besides that, I will also discuss about the international trade. You may be aware of OPEC. I will discuss about OPEC and its role in oil trade, the energy crisis, etc. Among the various sources of energy, petroleum is the most important and widely used. It is lighter than coal and gives more heat. Therefore, it is preferred as a driving force in various means of transportation, various agriculture machines, for example, tractor, harvester, combine machines, etc. And these are also driven by petroleum. In manufacturing industries too, petroleum is being increasingly used as fuel. During war, the use of petroleum becomes inevitable. Germany was defeated in World War II mainly because of the shortage of petroleum. So you can understand the significance of petroleum. To understand the nature and properties of petroleum. Petroleum means rock, which is known as Petra in geography, and oleum, that means oil. So it is a mixture of many different hydrocarbons of varying specific gravity, ranging from viscous liquids and dissolved waxy solids to gaseous compounds. The grade or quality of petroleum depends chiefly on the relative proportions of different hydrocarbons and amount of impurities, especially sulfur compounds. Light oils have low percentage of carbon and high percentage of hydrogen. Therefore, light oils such as the gasoline and naphthalene are much richer in the lighter hydrocarbons than are the heavier fuel oils. Generally speaking, the values of petroleum increases as its density decreases. Petroleum varies in color from light straw to almost black. Most of the petroleum of the world occurs in sedimentary rocks, in the tiny pore spaces in sand, sandstone, conglomerates, and limestone, shales, and clay also contains oil. But it is difficult to extract the oil from these impermeable rocks. I hope you understand these permeable and impermeable rocks. Open texture permeable sandstones are perhaps the most common reservoir rocks, although notable production has been obtained from porous limestone. Thus, sedimentary rocks, particularly those deposits in shallow marine environment, are the best sources. Anticlines are the best known structure favorable for petroleum accumulation. Please see the structure of anticlines. It's like a wave. Natural gases is also found in most cases dissolved in the liquid petroleum in the intrinsic of the reservoir rocks. Now let me discuss about the origin and recovery. The mixture of hydrocarbons known as petroleum is believed to be of the organic origin and to have resulted from the decomposition of microorganisms of plant and animal nature. It is found in the pore spaces of rocks where the structure gave rise to traps in which minute droplets accumulated and were prevented from escaping the impervious cap rocks. Although strata oil is usually brought to the surface by pumping, nature often provides considerable force or pressure caused by water or gas. More commonly, pressure is exerted by hydrocarbon in gas form. If a well is drilled near the crest of a structure wherein free gas exists above the oil, a 𝗧𝗧 results. It is drilled into the oil containing portion of the structure. The pressure of the gas will aid in bringing the oil to surface. So let me begin from the petroleum and mineral oil distribution in India. The process began in tertiary period, I can say 3 million years ago. Most of the oil reserves in India are associated with anticlines and fault traps in the sedimentary rock formation of tertiary time. In tertiary period, aquatic life was abundant in various forms, especially the minor microscopic forms of flora and fauna. Conditions for oil formation were favorable, especially in the lower and middle. Tertiary period, dense forest and sea organism flourished in the gulfs, estuaries, deltas and the land surrounding them during this period. Extent of oil bearing strata in India, when we discuss about it, I can say 1 lakh square kilometer or 42% of India covered with sedimentary rocks. 10 lakh square kilometer from marine basin of Mesozoic and Tertiary time. Total continental shelf of probable oil bearing rocks amount to 2 lakh square kilometer. The total sedimentary area including both onshore and offshore comprises 27 basins. Now let me describe about the onshore oil production in India. Brahmaputra Valley of northeast India, Barmer area of Rajasthan, Gujarat coast in western India, Kaveri onshore basin in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh has both onshore and offshore oil reserves. As I mentioned, Assam is a significant region in this connection. Assam oil fields are the oldest oil producing state in India. The main oil bearing strata extend from a distance of 320 km in upper Assam along the Brahmaputra Valley. Oil fields of Assam are relatively inaccessible, are distantly located from the main consuming areas. After this explanation, let me describe about the offshore production in India. Western coast, Mumbai High basins and 𝗂𝗟𝗏. Mumbai High in 1974 rock strata of Miocene age. This was discovered. Sagar Samrat basin south of Mumbai High. 𝗂𝗟𝗏 in 𝗂𝗟𝗏 Island in the Gulf of Khambat. So far as eastern coast is considered, the basin and delta region of the Godavari and Krishna and Kaveri river hold great potential for oil and gas production. Now let me explain you the petroleum refining in India. India's first oil refinery started working way back in 1901 at Digboi in Assam. In 1954, another refinery known as Tarapur in Mumbai observed. In this connection, refinery hub and refining capacity exceeds the demand. Excess refined oil and other petroleum products are exported. Let me also describe about the advantages of pipeline. Ideal to transport liquids and gases, the pipelines can be laid through difficult terrain as well as underwater. It needs very little maintenance. Pipelines are safe, accident-free and environment-friendly. But if advantage is there, definitely there may be some disadvantages too. So the disadvantages associated with pipelines are it's not flexible. For example, it can be used only for a few fixed points. Let me describe about the crude oil pipelines. Salaya Mathura pipelines, Paradeep Haldia Barauni pipelines, which is known as PHBPL, Mudra Panipat pipelines, MPPL. These are known pipelines in India. Let me explain the petroleum and mineral oil at world level. More than half of the world's proven oil reserves are located in the Middle East, including Iran but not North Africa, Canada, United States, Latin America, Africa and the region occupied by former Soviet Union contains less than 15% of the world's proven reserves. Given region produces is not always proportionate to the size of its proven reserves. The one is supergiant, fields with 5 billion or more barrels of ultimately recoverable oil, and the second world-class giant, fields with 500 million to 5 billion barrels of recoverable oil. Fewer than 40 supergiant oil fields have been found worldwide. The Arabian-Iranian sedimentary basin in the Persian Gulf region contains 2/3 of these supergiant fields, oil fields, and in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has the second largest proven oil reserves. The discovery that transformed Saudi Arabia into a leading oil country was 𝗪𝗪 oil fields. Another important discovery was the Osmania offshore field in Persian Gulf. It is the third largest oil field in the world and the largest offshore. Let me describe some oil fields in Russia. It has significant proven reserves of 5% of the world's total and is the world's leading petroleum producer. In Russia, there are two supergiant oil fields, Western Siberia and Yenensky Khatanga. Another region is known as Kamchatka Peninsula and Sakhalin Islands. These are said to have significant oil reserves. United States, Mexico, and Canada region. North America has many sedimentary basins. Many oil fields have been found in North Slope region of Alaska and East Texas. United States has produced more oil than any other countries. You may be aware of the Rocky Mountain region. The Rocky Mountain region contains an enormous amount of petroleum reserves. Mexico has more than 10 billion barrels of proven oil reserves and is one of the top 10 oil producers in the world. Oil fields in Venezuela and in Brazil. Venezuela is the largest oil exporter in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela has 300.88 billion barrels of proved oil reserves ahead of Saudi Arabia's 266.46 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. Most of these reserves are located in the Orinoco Belt. Brazil has 14 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, which is known as the second largest in South America. And after America, I think I should describe some oil fields in United Kingdom also. The United Kingdom is an important North Sea producer, and its proven oil reserves of some 3 billion barrels are the largest in the European Union. When it comes to African region, the male oil producing countries of Africa are Libya, Algeria, Nigeria, and Egypt. Niger Delta in Nigeria contains enormous amount of oil. Egypt is self-sufficient in oil production. Algeria is another significant producer of petroleum, where much of the national income comes from oil exports. Libya became a consistent producer of petroleum. The total oil reserves of Libya is around 3% of the global reserve. After describing the distribution and different pipelines at India and international level, let me describe about the international trade. The geographic distribution of petroleum is very irregular. Large areas of old row are devoid of oil, and many other areas such as Western Europe, India, Japan, etc. are short of oil in international trade in crude oil and petroleum, which is very important. World trade in petroleum is carried on by OPEC countries. The pattern of trade in petroleum is not a fixed one. The USA, being a major exporter, imports both crude oil and refined product from nearby countries such as Venezuela and Colombia, as well as distant areas like Netherlands, Middle East, and Indonesia. Europe obtains much of its oil from the Middle East and North Africa. Countries like the UK and Netherlands, which do not have sufficient oil to meet their demand, export considerable quantities of refined product by importing crude oil. Countries of Southern and Central Africa, Australia, and New Zealand also import oil. The major oil exporting countries include Middle East countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, Qatar, Oman, etc. United Arab Emirates, Caribbean countries such as Venezuela and Colombia, other countries such as Libya, Algeria, Nigeria, Angola, Asian countries such as Kazakhstan, Indonesia, Malaysia, China, etc. And in Europe, UK, Russia, Norway, these are the major countries in this connection. So, it is very important for you to understand the role of OPEC in oil trade. You may be knowing the OPEC countries. OPEC, that means Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. This was formed in 1960 at Baghdad Convention. Initially, it comprised of 5 members: Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Yemen, Venezuela, and later 8 countries. These were Libya, Algeria, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, Ecuador, Gabon, and Indonesia. The major objective of the OPEC was to safeguard the oil export interest of member countries and find out the most suitable mechanism to combat the falling international crude oil price and demand of petroleum. Further, exploration, research on marketing strategies, and fight against multinational monopoly were other major objectives. Keeping in mind the massive increase of oil demand, particularly in Western Europe and Southeast Asia, OPEC restricted its oil output and enhanced crude oil price sharply between 1965 and 1975. This had a very adverse effect on the economy of the important countries, particularly developing countries like India. Since 1973, oil has increased 7 times. In 1974, the price of crude oil raised 130% in one day. Besides, the OPEC countries reduced production in a planned way. So, the international oil price remained at an unprecedented high level. There have been frequent disputes among member countries such as Iran, Iraq in 1981 to 1987, Iraq, Kuwait in 1990, and a strained relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran, Iraq, which has weakened the tie between OPEC countries. After understanding the structure and different issues associated with OPEC countries, it is very pertinent for you to understand the energy crisis. The discovery of petroleum in the Middle East was followed by a spurt in its production as well as consumption in the industrial and transport sectors, and in fact revolutionized these two sectors. Dependence on coal as a source of energy began to decrease gradually. However, continuing dependence of oil as a source of energy in many countries made them increasingly vulnerable to foreign supplies. Embargo by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, established in 1960, shook the whole world from their complacencies. The illusion of an abundant supply of cheap energy dissolved overnight. Global concern over energy crisis brought national policy revisions to conserve energy and discover reliable and workable ways to meet the threat of lifestyle in industrial societies. The large price increase in consumer products were common. This situation was repeated during the Iranian Revolution and later during the Gulf War in 1991. The shortage of 1970s and thereafter in 1991 forced all the countries of the world to think more drastically about their energy future. Serious efforts began to be made in reducing or eliminating wasteful use of reservoir resources in order to protect and conserve it for future. The growing concern about the environmental effects of fossil fuel also stepped up the conservation efforts. Still, much more is to be done. So, this chapter has explained about the important mineral, for example, petroleum. Its availability is not very expanded, and because this mineral is high in demand, world politics revolved around it. That is what I was explaining. We have learned about the nature and distribution of petroleum and mineral oil, and besides that, we also try to understand that how significant it is to maintain the domestic reserves in case of crisis.